Today we're talking about courage, and the word sometimes reminds me of the cowardly lion from The Wizard of Oz who went on this whole journey to find the courage that was innately within him the whole time. And that's how most of us see ourselves these days. When we believe that we lack a personality trait or a skill, we immediately go searching only to find out that it was there all along. And I think that when it comes to courage, society has built this illusion around the idea that we must go out in a hyper-competitive world, and those who don't have the quote-unquote balls to make it won't go anywhere. I had the idea built up in my mind where I thought I had to be externally courageous, suppressing any emotion to be felt so that I could charge like that lion chasing its prey or end goal. But this doesn't only apply to men. This applies to all of us because the world has taught us to exacerbate all masculine qualities and avoid ourselves from events that take true courage, and we'll get into that in a moment. The way I understand courage now is much different than I used to. Courage used to be doing frightening, risky, even ultra dangerous things so that we feel good. But we were feeling good because we did those things to be admired, loved, and valued. Gary Zukav, a spiritual teacher and author of the book Universal Human, describes this as its street name, the macho mentality. This type of courage is what allows us to chase any given target and hit that bullseye. But we start believing and internalizing this idea that courage and emotions are separate entities, but in reality, they are one. The new use of courage, as Zukav says, is to act from the most loving parts of our personality that we can access. But what if someone is yelling in our face, or our partner just broke up with us and we're feeling all this rage and confusion? It seems pretty hard, no? Exactly. And that's where true courage lies. When we can access the lightest aspects of ourselves in moments where the shadow or darkness takes over, we are acting with courage. Throughout his life, His Holiness the Dalai Lama was tormented heavily by the Chinese, who forced him to renounce his religion. He was beaten and caused to suffer. But when they asked him what his biggest fear was, the Dalai Lama said, "I was afraid of losing my compassion for the Chinese." That is personal authentic power, what we may call a process of tapping in within ourselves to our source of love over fear. In the following segment, we will take counsel upon the wisdom of HeatherAsh Amara, a women's empowerment leader and author of Warrior Goddess Training. She will guide us through a process of going inside and unlocking abundant sources of courage. Enjoy.
It's such a beautiful question. So one of the things that I love doing is putting one hand on my heart and one hand on my belly and just taking a breath. And that's where courage lies, is right here in our bodies. Connecting, one beautiful thing that we can do to build up our courage is come home to ourselves and then imagine somebody that you love, a mentor, a guide, it could be anybody, standing right next to you. And whispering to you, "You've got this, you can do this." And if you can also imagine all of your ancestors cheering you on, all the people that have done courageous acts cheering you on, to know that you're part of a river of incredibly courageous, wild, passionate, loving humans. I've been blessed to be with friends that have been having babies, and courage is like one of the huge, when you're giving birth to a human being out of like, what? How is this possible? But I remember whispering to my friend, I'm like, think about all the women that have given birth before, honey. You've got this. You've got this. And that I've then brought into everything in my life, of when I start getting scared of like, humans have done hard things. You can do this too, right? We need each other, I think. And that's where courage comes from, is letting go of the individual, I will force and push through, of I will gather, I will let myself be held, I will look where I'm going, and I'll know obstacles will come up, and I'll keep going. And that we're learning, courage is not about power over, courage is about learning to work with. And sometimes courage is about letting go and going, okay, this is not going to happen, or I do need to end this relationship, or I do need to make a boundary, or I don't have it. That's courage too. So I always equate courage with vulnerability. They go together so beautifully. Yeah.
We need a new definition of courage. And as HeatherAsh said, we need each other. And courage is not about exerting power over others. It's about looking inside and not being afraid to look transparently at our fears and darker aspects of ourselves. When we respond with love, when we respond with faith that we're being held and supported, these are the moments when we can truly shine and step into our highest potential. Also, remember this: it takes true courage to act from love instead of fear. And making a tough life decision doesn't always feel good, but it will always feel right. By courageously looking inside ourselves, we will come in contact with our intuition. These two aspects of the human experience are deeply intertwined, because when we're guided by intuition, our courageous acts are carried out with full force. To wrap up today's powerful message, we asked HeatherAsh what we can do in order to listen to our intuition. Let's get into it.
Looking back, so one is more stillness, more integration time, more meditation or walking practice. Doesn't have to be sitting. Might be a quiet walking practice. Might be being in nature. Just giving ourselves more time to integrate, to slow down, to create gaps and space. And I always, I really work to create gaps between things. So like literally between here and going to the bathroom, can I get completely empty and quiet? When I'm making a cup of coffee or waiting in line for something, can I get really quiet? And so often we're filling up space with thinking and trying to figure it out. And my practice now is empty between everything. Okay. And the other thing is what I said, hindsight, is that we have to learn to ascertain the difference between strategy and old stories and intuition, because they often masquerade, right? You think it's your intuition, like, I got it, I know exactly what I'm going to do. And then you realize later, oh, that was a complete strategy. I was dodging something, or I was running from an old pattern that I didn't even realize. And so when we're willing to be wrong and look back and say, okay, was that actually intuition or was that something else? We start to find in our own bodies what the feeling of intuition is versus the feeling of a strategy. So for me, I've learned if there's a particular buzziness in my body and a kind of leaning forward push, it's not intuition. Or if I'm defending something, it's not intuition. Intuition for me is there's a softness and there's this very quiet often, but really like solid voice that drops in, that there's I don't need to understand it or defend it. I'm just like, got it. And there's times I don't like what my intuition is saying, but I can feel like there's that feeling, okay, let me trust it. But I'm always willing to be wrong too. And I think that's really important. that we have that spaciousness so we can learn as we go along.
We are all intuitive, and the mantra of this podcast is to tap in within, to hear those whispers from God, the universe, source, however you want to call it. But when we place our belief system in that we're being guided, it makes our actions much more intentional and aligned with who we are. So take some moments in the day to return to your source of courage. You can do this exercise guided by HeatherAsh anytime you would like. Whenever you're feeling disempowered, discouraged, misaligned, remember to tap into your internal power. If you guys are enjoying these episodes, we invite you to head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. It really helps for the visibility of our show and allows us to grow together as a community. As many of you know who have been tuning in, or if you're new, firstly, welcome. And I wanted to tell you guys that we'll be heading to Mexico very soon to lead another LiveBeyond experience. In these experiences, you'll have the opportunity to co-work, co-live, and co-learn with extraordinary humans and integrate all the concepts that we talk about on this podcast, a process that we call experiential learning. If you want more info, don't hesitate to reach out via Instagram at livebeyond.global and head over to our website to apply to any upcoming experiences. Keep the courage going, everyone. All the love, and see you next week.